Hey, welcome to That One Time, the place for unforgettable moments and stories worth sharing. Funny, touching, surprising, just like life itself. Grab a seat, get comfortable, and let's dive in. From the bus stop to the house stretched Olivia's path. The day was behind her, the evening loomed ahead, promising warmth and comfort. The very beginning of spring breathed all around, and twilight, which just 2 weeks ago descended as impenetrable darkness, now merely softly painted the sky in tender lilac hues. Her hands were weighed down by bags filled with the anticipation of a Friday treat: fruit for her little sweet tooth, fresh bread, a substantial piece of meat that could form the base of both a rich borscht and a hearty goulash. And of course, small pleasures. How could she do without them on payday? Tomorrow was a day off, which meant the evening would grant her and her daughter Alice their cherished ritual, a movie night under the Friday cover. Alice had already chosen a comedy, light and giggly, perfectly suited to her ringing laughter. Olivia smiled. If there was anything that filled Olivia's life with true meaning, made it full and happy, it was Alice. She was now 8. The girl studied at a nearby school and was an excellent student. Olivia never hovered over her homework, only occasionally helping with extra projects, nothing more. The woman wished she could spend more time with her child, but she had to work a lot, a great deal, to provide for the two of them. However, Alice managed perfectly well on her own. She was responsible, clever, serious, and surprisingly independent. From the first grade, she had to learn the taste of self-reliance. Walking to school by herself when her mother was already rushing for the bus, returning alone to the silence of an empty apartment, managing lunch, homework, and household chores. She even set the alarm on her phone herself so as not to be late for practice. Alice played basketball in the school section. The coach saw a steel core in her and great prospects in the sport. A miracle child, no less. Olivia smiled, thinking about her girl. Yes, she was incredibly lucky. And yet, looking at children surrounded by adult care, loving grandparents, attentive stay-at-home mothers, reliable fathers, Olivia's heart ached with a poignant pain. Those boys and girls had more time for games. They were looked after. Their lives were brighter, safer, happier. Initially, the anxiety for the little girl with a huge backpack on her shoulders, walking everywhere alone, was almost physical. Colleagues, without hesitation, voiced their fears. What if someone takes her? What about a dog? What if she gets lost? Olivia just sighed heavily. These fears lived within her, never disappearing. But faith in Alice, in her amazing maturity for 8 years, her attentiveness and intelligence, was stronger. She knew her daughter wouldn't go with a stranger, would avoid a pack of dogs, and would certainly find her way home. But there was no other way. Olivia couldn't afford the luxury of staying home or finding a job closer by. The position of economist at the brick factory allowed her to survive, providing for herself and her daughter. The salary, higher than the city average, didn't allow for extravagance, but provided confidence in the future. It was enough for rent, food, clothes, even for rare entertainment. Earning less would mean jeopardizing their existence. And then Eleanor M., her former mother-in-law, would be able to fulfill her long-held dream. The thought of her former mother-in-law sent a chill down her spine. A terrible person. And yet, once upon a time, she seemed the embodiment of kindness and openness. When, many years ago, Stephen brought a pregnant Olivia to meet his parents, the anxiety was almost physical. She perfectly understood how their story looked from the outside. A provincial girl with no money hooked a guy from a wealthy family, pulled the wool over his eyes, deliberately got pregnant to force him to marry her. In reality, it was different. But even close friends who knew her well reasoned in the same vein. Good job, red-haired Sarah sincerely admired upon hearing the news. You look so proper, but you've set up your life in a way we could only dream of. You'll live like a queen. Great plan. I should do that too. The girls weren't malicious. They were genuinely happy for their friend, who, as they thought, had pulled off a risky scheme and emerged victorious. After such words, Olivia understood. Everyone thought that. And Stephen's parents, of course, would see her as an enemy. Of course, a village nobody came to secure a good marriage. Stephen did indeed belong to a wealthy circle, but Olivia didn't find out about it right away. He dressed simply, jeans, t-shirts, sneakers. Only a trained eye could notice the cost of his watch or phone. But how could a village girl know that? A watch was a watch, a phone was a phone. He came to university on a motorcycle. Many guys flaunted expensive cars, that was clear. But a motorcycle? Olivia thought it was affordable transport. Anyone can afford it. He worked part-time as a courier for a large real estate firm. Olivia thought he'd saved up for the bike from his salary or taken out a loan. At the beginning of their relationship, Stephen wasn't in a hurry to tell her that the firm belonged to his father. The girl couldn't even imagine the scale of his parents' wealth. For a long time, Olivia watched Stephen from afar. They studied in different faculties. He was in the prestigious finance and economics faculty. After school, Olivia also really wanted to go there, preparing day and night, but she didn't get in. Olivia, a village girl who grew up in poverty, yearned with all her soul to break free from destitution. Her parents were wonderful, kind, understanding, supportive, but she didn't want to repeat their fate, full of hard work and need. They lived in a small house without plumbing, with a wash basin on the wall and a toilet outside. They only heated the bathhouse on weekends. Her parents worked hard, but there wasn't enough money. Was it like that for everyone? Others lived the same way. It's just that in their village there weren't enough jobs, and salaries were tiny. People didn't despair, they survived. But Olivia didn't wish such a lot for herself. Her parents, seeing her aspirations, tried to free her from household chores so she could devote herself to studying. "Study, daughter, don't be lazy," her mother instructed. "God willing, you'll make something of yourself. You have a good head on your shoulders." "The teacher says you're smart and promising," her father echoed. Alice was indeed the best in her class. Studying came easily to her. The entrance exams were a battle for a different life. She endured it with dignity, scoring impressive points. But they weren't enough for a state-funded place in the prestigious finance and economics faculty. Disappointment mingled with bewilderment. How could this be? She, the best in school, ended up behind so many others. Later she learned about tutors who drilled for tests, about gifts to the dean's office. At the time, she blamed herself, deciding she hadn't tried hard enough. She was just a few points short. Yet she easily qualified for the commercial department. At the results board, where Olivia couldn't hold back tears, an unfamiliar senior student comforted her. "You'll study paid, and then someone will be expelled, and you'll switch to state-funded. Many people do that. You have brains, they like people like you." Olivia just shook her head. For her, a village girl, the annual fee was insurmountable. She had already decided, a year was lost, she would have to return to the village, prepare more seriously. But even that wasn't a guarantee. But the same girl suggested another path. "Why do you need this finance and economics? It's all connections and rich kids there. Enterprise economics is practically the same, even better, less pretentiousness." Olivia didn't know how to thank this accidental savior. She had more than enough points. She became a student. She got a dormitory place, a social scholarship. For a long time, she couldn't believe her luck. Studying consumed her entirely. Lectures, seminars, homework. Everything came easily. Teachers held her up as an example. It was a little awkward. She devoted all her time and energy to studying, but the scholarship wasn't enough. In the evenings, she worked part-time as a saleswoman in a bakery near the dormitory. There was no time left for clubs, discos, or student parties. Sometimes she felt sad, but the thought of her goal drove away the despondency. Her friends excitedly talked about dates, admirers, romantic adventures. Olivia listened, dreaming of her own. A reliable, caring, cheerful, handsome guy she could fall completely in love with. But those who came into her view seemed too carefree, unserious, selfish. You couldn't tie your fate to people like that. Her friends jokingly called her a bore, frightening her with a lonely old age surrounded by cats. In her 4th year, as if in reward for her patience, he appeared. How had she not noticed him before? He roared into the parking lot on a black motorcycle, dressed in jeans and a black t-shirt. What attracted her? The skill with which he handled the iron horse? Or his particular posture? He reminded her of a prince on a noble steed. Rushing to the library, Olivia stopped, watching from afar as he took off his helmet. For some reason, she really wanted to see his eyes. She shouldn't have done that. Because when Stephen, as if sensing her gaze, turned around, Olivia understood. She was lost. Piercing turquoise eyes on a tanned face, a dazzling smile, thick hair the color of ripe wheat. She could have watched forever, if not for her shyness. Standing there, staring at a stranger. What would he think? She sharply turned and hurried towards the building. He caught up with her right at the entrance, gently holding her arm. Olivia blushed, meeting his slightly mocking but warm gaze. Her heart pounded wildly. Warmth spread through her body. That day their story began. At first beautiful, like a fairy tale, and it all ended like a bad horror movie. Stephen said he felt her gaze and understood. She was the one he could be happy with. Later, analyzing, Olivia realized he, sated with spoiled princesses from his circle, found solace in a simple, unsophisticated village girl. It was interesting for him to observe her sincere emotions, her admiration for trifles like a bouquet of roses or the luxury of restaurants. He was her guide into a new world, and that flattered his ego. Of course, there were feelings, but he wasn't going to make her the center of his universe. At the time, Olivia thought he was performing feats. Stephen wasn't stingy, showering her with gifts. Olivia felt awkward. She tried to refuse. She knew the value of money. But he just smiled and made another generous gesture. Their romance resembled sometimes a romantic comedy, sometimes a beautiful melodrama. He was attentive, charming, always knew how to make her laugh. Olivia still studied a lot, but now, miraculously, there was enough time for everything. Dates and lecture notes. It was a wonderful, unforgettable time. The fairy tale ended when Olivia realized with horror she was pregnant. She couldn't believe it. They had been careful, but 2 bright lines on the test left no doubt. Despair overwhelmed her. The diploma, state exams, the final stretch, everything was under threat. With a huge belly, who would hire her? 5 years of study for nothing? How would Stephen react? Would he take responsibility? A beautiful romance was one thing, a pregnant girl was quite another. After crying from fear and hurt, she calmed down and decided she had to tell him. Stephen reacted unexpectedly, with delight. Wow, we're going to be parents. Cool. His eyes shone like a child who had received a new toy. Olivia didn't understand it then. She was just happy that he didn't see it as a problem. And what are we going to do now? She asked hopefully. We'll get married, of course. He hugged her. We'll finish studying. I'll go to work. You'll be on maternity leave. And where will we live? Olivia worried. They'll ask me to leave the dorm. In my apartment, Stephen shrugged. Dad gave it to me ages ago. It's big, you'll like it. I would have moved in, but Mom set a condition. Only after marriage, so now I'll get married. You have an apartment? Who are your parents? Olivia couldn't believe it. Stephen always avoided talking about his family. What is there to tell about them? Parents are parents. Mom's a housewife. She took care of us. There are 3 of us, remember? Dad's a businessman. He has a real estate agency. Didn't I tell you? No. Olivia shook her head. Well, now I'm telling you. We'll have somewhere to live. I need to introduce you to my parents. Mom will be happy. She's always holding my brothers up as examples, saying they're serious. Now she'll find out that I'm responsible too. Olivia dreaded meeting Stephen's parents. He was sure they would like her. She doubted it. No one would believe she didn't know about his wealth. Even her friends thought she deliberately got pregnant. What could she say to his relatives? But the meeting went more than successfully. In the luxurious interiors of the mansion, she felt lost. But Eleanor M., with the same turquoise eyes as her son, smiled openly. Olivia was struck by how young she looked, slender, impeccable, stylish. His father, Arthur M., also looked energetic. Despite their wealth, they turned out to be simple, pleasant people. Upon hearing Olivia's story, Eleanor M. exclaimed, "What a clever girl! Achieved it through her own hard work. I need people like that. Arthur M. added. After your maternity leave, I'll take you on. Don't worry about work. Olivia couldn't believe her happiness. Everything seemed like a fairy tale. Not only did they not express displeasure, but they were genuinely happy. Our rascal needs exactly someone like her. Eleanor M. shook her head. Responsible, hard-working. What a blessing that you met. Olivia didn't understand why she called him a rascal. Stephen seemed serious to her. Well, he rides a motorcycle, spends time with friends, but he's young. When else would he have fun? Stephen's parents threw a lavish wedding. Olivia felt awkward that they covered all the expenses. Her parents did too, but Eleanor M. acted so naturally, communicated so kindly with her mother and father, thanked them for raising their daughter, that the tension disappeared. In the dress chosen and paid for by her mother-in-law, Olivia felt like a princess and carried herself accordingly. Stephen was proud of his beautiful wife, held her hand, but after the official part, as always, he ran off to his friends. Olivia was happy then. How sociable, how cheerful he was. Family life also seemed like a fairy tale at first. A huge apartment she had only seen in magazines. Her own card, onto which a substantial sum magically appeared twice a month. Accustomed to saving, she couldn't keep up with spending. It was wonderful, throwing everything she wanted into the cart instead of looking for discounts. Her relationship with her mother-in-law was excellent. She considered them family. Eleanor M. visited often. They talked for a long time. It turned out she was also from a village and met Arthur, then a simple accountant in the city. It's our joint creation, she said about the business. And Eleanor M. often said that she had dreamed of a daughter all her life. I wanted a daughter so much, but only boys were born, and Stephen only appeared because I hoped for a girl. The last attempt. And here's another boy. The most loved, strangely enough, although I was very disappointed. The two older sons had given them 4 grandsons, all boys. I dream of buying dolls, braiding pigtails, choosing dresses, and here it's cars again, constructors. I adore them, of course, but I want something sweet, girlish, pink so much. You are our only hope. Before that, Olivia didn't care who was born. Afterwards, she suddenly realized that she also dreamed of a little girl with turquoise eyes like Stephen's and beautiful hair. It really was wonderful, braiding pigtails, dressing in pink. Stephen, on the contrary, dreamed of a son. Although Olivia increasingly felt that the child wasn't important to him, he spent more and more time away from home, work, friends. It wasn't like the beginning of their romance. She hoped that with the baby's birth, he would settle down. She was mistaken. It only got worse. Alice was born on time. When the tiny red creature was placed on her chest, Olivia understood. Life had split into before and after. Now she was mom. Stephen and his parents arranged a lavish discharge, a bear animator, balloons, flowers, a photographer. Eleanor M. tremblingly accepted the pink bundle. Her dream had come true, her long-awaited granddaughter. Stephen also posed with his daughter in his arms, but Olivia saw he was bored. There was none of that genuine joy in his eyes, that delight that shone in hers or in her mother-in-law's. Everyday life flowed, filled with worries about her daughter. Eleanor M. visited often, teaching her how to care for the baby. Olivia, a first-time mother, learned quickly, but her mother-in-law continued to come, and Olivia didn't object. She saw how happy she was with her granddaughter. It's wonderful when someone else loves the child besides the parents, especially since Stephen showed no interest, rather irritated by crying, complaining about sleepless nights. He didn't get up for the baby. Olivia always rushed. These nighttime activities burdened him. He disappeared from home more and more, sometimes not coming back at night. To questions, he replied that he wasn't a slave, he had a right to rest. The rose-tinted glasses shattered. Stephen showed his true colors. An eternal child. A rascal, as his mother said. Not ready for a family. At parties, he proudly carried his dressed-up daughter, admiring himself in the role of a father. On ordinary days, he avoided contact. He preferred not to talk to Olivia. It was hurtful and confusing. The truth came out by chance. One morning, Stephen, thinking his wife was asleep after long hours of rocking Alice, was cooing on the phone with someone very young. Bunny, My love. Laughter. Promises to have fun soon. Olivia lay there, barely restraining herself from bursting into the kitchen. But why? He had long become a stranger. He provided for them. What would she give her daughter by leaving now? She had to pretend she hadn't heard anything. From then on, signs of infidelity became obvious. Girls called, he barely hid it, although he spoke more restrainedly in front of her. He returned in the morning after business meetings, with nightclub bracelets on his wrist, smelling of strange perfume. Business trips to the south. He returned from there rested, tanned. Olivia endured, feeling humiliated, crushed. She still loved him, and he looked at her as if she were nothing. When had they last had a heart-to-heart? She didn't remember. She had to leave. Otherwise, she would lose herself. But where to go with a small daughter? Rent again? She would have to work. Alice was still tiny. She would get sick. Who needed an employee constantly on sick leave? Finding a job during such a period was almost impossible. Go back to the village? Back to where she had so desperately wanted to escape? To a house without amenities? Condemn her daughter to that? No. There was no way out. Stephen was right. She had nowhere to go, nothing to live on. In despair, Olivia made a fatal mistake. She turned to Eleanor M. She believed that her mother-in-law was fond of her. Gifts, compliments, kindness. How wrong she was. Well, that's not surprising, Eleanor M. shrugged. Stephen's been a rascal since childhood, an eternal child. But what about me? Olivia asked hopefully. What now? Live as you are? Stephen will provide for you. That's the price for a comfortable life. You won't even talk to him? Tears welled up in her eyes. I don't see the point. You can't change him. I can't. I'll divorce. Foolish. How will you manage alone? Alimony is pennies, nowhere to live. I'll go to my parents in the village. Better that than endure this. You'll take Alice? I won't see her? No, I won't deprive you. You can come and visit. So I'll see my granddaughter when you graciously allow it. She ignored the words about her son. She only cared about Alice, her long-awaited, beloved granddaughter, the object of her adoration. But that's how it is. I'm her mother. It's my decision. You're mistaken, dear. The child will be left with Stephen in a divorce. I'll take care of it. How good that you confided your plans to me. No, children stay with their mothers here. Yes, if the mother can support them. And you? Will you deprive your daughter of normal conditions? Take her to a remote village, to a house without amenities? Stephen has an apartment, they'll draw up a salary. Judge your chances yourself. But Stephen doesn't need Alice. She hadn't expected such a turn. The mother-in-law, in whom she saw an ally, turned out to be an enemy determined to take her daughter. But I need her. I've dreamed of a daughter all my life, then a granddaughter. So many plans. And now you want to take her away? No way. Olivia found the strength to leave. Alice was 3. It wasn't easy. Her parents and aunt supported her, gathered money for a rented apartment, a well-equipped one, so that the guardianship authorities, whom Eleanor M. had, of course, contacted, wouldn't have questions. They paid the rent for 6 months. During that time, Olivia enrolled Alice in kindergarten and found a job. Now she had conditions and a salary. Eleanor M. couldn't take the girl legally. But the struggle continued. Olivia hoped that her mother-in-law's sons would have daughters, and she would shift her focus. But Stephen, who married a photo model, became the father of 2 sons. Her brother also had a boy. Alice remained the only granddaughter. Eleanor M. didn't give up. She constantly wrote complaints to guardianship. She doesn't supervise, is busy with her personal life, treats her cruelly. Olivia and her mother got used to inspections by the police and guardianship. No violations were found, but Olivia lived in fear. Eleanor M. was rich, influential. She would come up with something, frame her. She would take Alice. Life without Alice became unthinkable. The girl was the center of her universe. Everything Olivia did was for her. Stephen wasn't interested in his daughter's life, transferring paltry alimony from his official income. Alice was okay with this. Less hassle. It was a pity Eleanor M. wasn't so indifferent. Now Olivia was rushing home. Alice was probably waiting. She had lingered at the shopping center, just for a minute, but spent almost an hour engrossed in discounts. Now she was maneuvering through the crowd near the center. Suddenly, a silhouette caught her attention. A frail, hunched old woman in an old coat and a gray downy shawl in worn felt boots. But her eyes, of an amazing faded light blue color. She was looking around, speaking to passers-by, but they hurried past, not seeing, not hearing. Olivia couldn't pass by. She stopped. The grandmother seemed to understand. Here was a listener. She looked into Olivia's eyes and rustled in a quiet voice, "Daughter, help me. I'm in a desperate situation." Olivia saw. It was true. Panic was on the old woman's face. "What happened?" Olivia asked gently. "I came for meat. There's good stuff in the basement here. But my wallet is gone. I left it at home. It's Jasper, the cat. While I was chasing him, everything flew out of my head. I had money for the ticket here. But how do I get home? I'm outside the city, in a dacha settlement. The bus drivers are mean. They won't take me for free. The driver swore at me in front of everyone." "And no one helped?" Olivia was surprised. "No," the old woman grieved. "There weren't many people, luckily. Otherwise he shamed me so much." "Of course, I'll help." Olivia reached into her wallet. "Daughter, thank you so much. God bless you." The elderly woman was almost crying. "Give me your address or phone number. My son will transfer it later." "It's not necessary," Olivia smiled. "It's no trouble. Good people help me too." "Thank you, my dear." Olivia nodded and walked on. She was in a hurry. Alice was waiting at home. Olivia spent a wonderful evening with her daughter. Ice cream, pizza, a movie cuddled up on the sofa. In such moments, she felt happy, protected. Warmth and comfort filled the apartment. All week she waited for Friday for these hours of peace and joy. Rarely, very rarely, on weekends, Olivia would go out somewhere with friends, to the cinema, a bar. If Eleanor M. found out about it, an inspection by guardianship immediately followed. How did she find out? Was she being watched? Recently, her mother-in-law reported that her daughter-in-law was partying at night. Olivia had gone to a friend's birthday. Alice, already grown up, went to bed by herself. Olivia returned when her daughter was asleep. Her mother-in-law saw a photo on a friend's social media, put the facts together, and used it as proof. Olivia was advised to hire a nanny with sympathy. It was hard to live under such surveillance. Eleanor M. was frightening in her persistence. Any problem Olivia had was a chance for her. If she found out about a court case, she would use her connections, fulfill her dream. No, she wouldn't give her such a chance. What to do? Olivia decided to walk. It was a long way, but the weather was wonderful. Spring, sun, birds, blue sky. The snow was melting, thaw patches on the asphalt. Before, this brought a lift. Today, a heaviness in her soul. An insurmountable problem had fallen upon her. How to solve it? Find money? Prove innocence? Both options seemed dead ends. Olivia walked past that same shopping center. She had to run into that old woman. If she had gone earlier or later, nothing would have happened. She would have lived peacefully, enjoying spring, her vacation. And suddenly, she froze as if struck by lightning. Was she imagining things? That same old woman was walking across the parking lot. The coat, the shawl, the eyes of an incredible light blue hue. Beside her, carefully supporting her so she wouldn't slip, walked a young man. Not Anthony. Short, fair-haired, with a pleasant open face and exactly the same eyes. He was smiling, telling her something. She was listening attentively. The pair was moving away. They would get into a car and leave. No, fate had given her a chance. Talk to the old woman. Everything might become clear. Olivia ran after them. Maybe they were in league with that Anthony. Was another unpleasant conversation waiting? But she had to try. "Wait!" Olivia shouted as they were almost out of sight around the corner. The old woman turned first. For a moment, and her face lit up with a smile of recognition. "Hello, daughter. You were the one who helped then. Thank you very much." The man, understanding, smiled. "So it was you who didn't pass by my mother? She told me how desperate she was, and people just ran past." "So you're her son too?" Olivia clarified. "What do you mean, too?" The grandmother was surprised. "Victor is my only son, late, long awaited. 4 daughters before him. But what about Anthony?" Olivia stared wide-eyed. What, Anthony? The old woman frowned. Did something happen to you? Victor guessed. Is it related to that meeting? Olivia nodded silently. Anthony was a swindler, that was clear. But the fear. What would he do? Threaten her? Harm her? Alice? How terrifying. Tell me what happened, Victor asked gently. It's not your problem. Leave me your number. Victor gently patted her shoulder. This gesture, it changed everything. Suddenly she wanted to share. Very much. My name is Olivia. That evening I was returning. And she told him everything. About the money, about the morning call, about Anthony, about her fears. She had to tell him about her personal life too, to explain why she didn't go to the police. Victor listened without interrupting. His mother shook her head, clicked her tongue, inserting angry remarks about Anthony, about Eleanor M. Inhuman, about Stephen. It's hard for you, girl, all by yourself. After listening, Victor was silent for a while. His mother showered Olivia with words of support. From this care, tears even welled up in Olivia's eyes, but she quickly blinked them back. No time to relax. We'll expose this, Anthony, Victor finally said, and so convincingly that Olivia felt she wasn't alone. There was protection. Strange, unexpected, complete strangers. But there was no doubt Victor knew what to do. I have a friend in the investigative committee. I started there myself, then went into business. My father was ill. I'll call him now. I'll keep you informed. You'll have to give a statement. When? I don't know, but soon. Olivia nodded. Now it wasn't scary to turn to the law. Thank you, she said, for your kindness. Why wouldn't I help a good person? He smiled and her heart warmed. You didn't pass by my mother when she was in need. And you got into this terrible situation because of us. On the way home, Olivia replayed the conversation in her mind again and again. Was it really true? She seriously feared that meeting Victor was just a figment of her desperate imagination looking for a way out. No, it couldn't be like that, but doubts remained. Victor called a couple of hours later. Olivia hadn't expected such speed. She jumped at the call, her heart clenched. What if it was Anthony? But on the other end was Victor's cheerful voice. Can you be at Red Banner Street in 40 minutes? They're waiting for you in room 307. They're already informed. Of course. Then everything spun with dizzying speed. Victor was waiting for her on the steps of the tall building. Seeing him, she felt relief. He was there, so everything would be fine. Victor escorted her to the investigator. Questions about Anthony. Olivia described him in detail. If he calls, stall for time, the investigator said. We've put him under surveillance. Say you're arranging a loan. Your phone is tapped, you're aware. Olivia nodded. Victor offered to give her a ride. She agreed with joy. Not because she was tired. Just, it felt so good to spend a little more time with him. She was surprised at herself. She had known him for such a short time, but next to him, peace, tranquility. She didn't want to part. What was this? The beginning of feelings? Or just gratitude? What difference did it make? The main thing was, they would see each other again. The case wasn't closed. Victor promised to see it through. That evening, Anthony called. On the investigator's advice, Olivia asked for a delay. You won't believe I didn't take the brooch? She asked, so he would confirm his claims. He insisted she had lured the jewel out, taking advantage of the old woman's helplessness. Aren't you tired of pretending? The brooch is with you. I'm calling the police. No, Olivia feigned fear. I can't be under suspicion. It's easier to give you the money. I've started arranging a loan. I need 2 days. All right, I'll call. He hung up. Olivia exhaled. It worked. She had bought time. The rest of the evening passed as usual. Alice, a project, dinner, Monopoly. Olivia tried not to think about Victor, but she couldn't help it. She remembered his eyes, his smile. She checked herself. Surely he's not free. Wife? Kids? You're dreaming. If so, his significant other is lucky. Being next to someone like that is happiness. The next day flew by unnoticed, and then, during her lunch break, her phone chirped cheerfully. On the screen, Victor. Her heart sweetly froze. A chill in her stomach. What if it was bad news? He suggested meeting at a cafe near her work. Olivia warned her boss, hurried over. Victor was waiting at a table, calm, happy. It was clear from his face, everything was all right. Olivia couldn't help but admire him. High cheekbones, confidence, a calm gaze. Good afternoon. He stood up, pulling out a chair. Gallantry. I have news. Excellent news. Anthony has been caught. He has many victims, about 5 that have been identified. 5? Olivia was slightly pleased. She wasn't the only one. Victor told her. He was from an orphanage. He didn't want to work as a plasterer. He wanted a beautiful life. First a pickpocket, then finer, phone scams. He was surprised how easily people transferred money. He was proud of his exploits. He convinced the old woman he was the child of her deceased son. She rewrote her apartment to him. He didn't catch any bigger fish, but he wasn't worried. Greed is dangerous. With Olivia, it was accidental. He saw her in court because of her mother-in-law. He figured she couldn't afford to show up at the police station. An ideal victim. He started following her, waiting for the moment. Her life was boring in his opinion. And then, chance. He saw her helping his mother. The plan ripened instantly. He didn't account for one thing. Victor smiled. You accidentally ran into Mom again. The probability was minimal. What happens to him now? He'll go where he belongs. He'll have time to think. The investigator pulled the threads. So many victims. They're waiting for him in jail. Olivia couldn't believe that the problem that had poisoned her life had disappeared. What next? Nothing connected her and Victor. He would leave, and that was it. The conversation came to an end. All that was left was to thank him. The man sighed deeply. And I don't want you to think I'm taking advantage of being a savior, but if I invited you to the movies tonight, what would you say? Olivia felt warmth in her chest. What would she say? Yes. She had to restrain a shout of joy with all her might. Apparently, her emotions were written on her face. Victor understood everything and smiled.